VikesNow. I am Dustin Baker, and we are really, really close to the regular season. The NFL regular season starts Thursday night, so we're about 4 or 5 days from that. And then the Vikings travel to New Jersey for a date with the Giants on September 8th. We are here with Eric Hortsman, who's been on the show. I think this is the third time, maybe the fourth time. How are you tonight, sir?
Yeah, doing well, doing well. Thanks for having me back, guys. It's been a little while, but yeah, excited to get back on and talk some Vikings. So
Yeah,
appreciate it.
there's been a lot of stuff that has happened, good and bad, since we last chatted with you. Brev, how are you tonight?
Pretty good, and kind of like you guys led on to, there's some pretty interesting things that have come out the last day or so. Not even talking about roster cut down, but excited to get opinions on those.
Yep, and we're going to launch right into those. So for viewers who are watching and want to stay for the whole time, we are first going to chat about Mike Zimmer's tell-all interview that nobody asked for to the Star Tribune, and then we'll talk about surprising stuff from the roster shave downs that happened on Tuesday. Talk a little bit about Kwesi Adofo-Mensah also getting very honest, maybe not as aggressive as Mike Zimmer was. And then we're going to go into Vikings Giants for the last 5 or 6 minutes. So, Eric, I'm going to start with you, the guest of honor. I woke up to this. I sleep in on weekends, and Mike Zimmer sat down with the Star Tribune, or at least they covered it. I couldn't get a drop on it if he was interviewed by somebody else. And to summarize, when he was fired, the ownership of the Vikings said, "Hey, you want to meet with the team before you leave?" And he said, "Nope, they got me fired. So I'm out of here." And then he also talked about how everything went really bad in the 2021 NFL draft. He left the facility when Kellen Mond was drafted. He also talked about, he basically said that we weren't able to get defensive replacement players on the whole once Kirk Cousins was signed because his contract was too big. And that, I think there's even more stuff that was in the interview, but those were the three that stood off the page to me. Eric, reaction, I guess, on social media was somewhat mixed. There were some that thought it was very stubborn and rude or just old manish. And then some were like, "Hey, I love the blunt force honesty this guy has." Do you fall on one of those spectrums or right in the middle?
Yeah, I think I'm probably leaning towards more of the first one, the grumpy old man
Yeah.
type vibe there. I mean, yeah, great for him for being brutally honest about it. I mean, it gives us stuff to talk about, right? But yeah, I don't know how you could kind of come off any worse than what he just did for himself, to be honest. um, wow, yeah, the and it, especially like the no, not wanting to meet with the team or address it or whatever, and they got me fired. And it's like, well, no, not quite. But like, what a slap in the face to like Harrison Smith is just the first one that comes to mind. It's like that dude gave you pretty much everything, right? Daniil Hunter, just those really important vets that were still on the team from like the 2017 run, and everything like that. And I honestly, even 19, it's like, okay, if they wouldn't have won that playoff game, see ya, see ya, Zimmer. They got you a contract extension actually after the 19 season first, and then you screwed it up bad enough to get yourself fired. Is kind of how I look at it. So yeah, just I mean, how tone deaf can you possibly be? Yeah, it's kind of my at least initial thoughts on it. Just again, couldn't be happier with Kevin O'Connell at this point, especially after that. It's like, man, you have a new, like, you have a job. It's not like you're not employed anymore. You're still in the NFL, right? It's
Yeah,
yeah, I
and
don't
then
know.
the Vikings
Yeah.
don't play the Cowboys until next year if Zimmer's still there. Or I guess if the two teams got to the postseason, they could meet there. Unrelated to Zimmer specifically, for Vikings historians, they indeed tried to trade up for Justin Fields. We heard rumors about that a lot right after the draft and then the subsequent 3 years. But Mike Zimmer, all on his own, confirmed those. Brevin, so we have Eric that said, "Yeah, this was the grumpy old man approach, no accountability." What say you, Brev?
First of all, I want to say I thought it was awesome. I thought it was really cool of Mike Zimmer to give us one last final thing to really talk about before we get into the season. So I don't know if it'll last us a week because this week is going to feel like forever, but I would have to agree it's definitely pretty petty, grumpy old. man. Um, I thought I still think it's awesome. I just want to make that known that he just came out and said all that stuff from a standpoint like it, it it's just so petty. I don't know. It's so petty that it's awesome. And I, like the thing that got me was he said something about Terrence Newman, and because Terrence Newman said something mean about him, he was like, "Okay, Terrence, we're done." It was like that's it. Like I don't know. It kind of sounds like an ex-girlfriend. I don't know. It's none of it shocked me really. Like none of it made me like when I was reading it, none of it was like, oh wow, didn't see that coming. It was completely obvious that there was some major rift between Mike and Rick. Well, Mike in the front office, I guess, but we just got more detail on it.
Yeah, I guess I don't have a problem with the brutal honesty, but the very first, like right off the bat, nugget about I don't want to meet with my players because they did this to me. I don't
Yeah,
think that's what a leader does, like at all. Like even if you really feel that way, you'd get them together and say goodbye. And then there was a strange, like if you connect the dots, he said the players got me fired. About 2 years afterward, his son died of alcoholism, and he said his son couldn't get a job because he got fired. It almost felt to me like he was blaming the players or blaming the Vikings for everything that eventually happened to him. And I'm like, wow, there's a lot of degrees here you have to get to that. My wife and I were and my son were driving to a fantasy draft, our extended family one in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and I was giving her the cliff notes of this interview, and she's like, well, what happened? She's like, we like him, or everybody liked him for a while, and I just said, winning cures all. So when things were coming up, and they were winning their 10 games per season every other year, nobody really cared that he's kind of a prick. And then after the fact, it just comes out that those last probably 2 seasons got real nasty, and the rift between Spielman and Zimmer was very pronounced. So I'm right there with Eric as well, that you kind of have the exact polar opposite head coach now, who, if anything, is too happy and too lenient all the time. So you could tell that the ownership said, like, let's not do this again. That's probably why ultimately they said no thanks to Harbaugh, is because he might not be as much of a prick as Zimmer comes off is, but he's got his own little ways that would make a lot of us go, what's going on here? And scandals. So, all right, we had to get the Zimmer stuff. It sounds like we were all just kind of mind boggled by it. Brev still thought it was cool that this actually came out. Eric,
really
back to you.
cool.
Yeah, Eric, back to you about the roster deadline. It was a very eventful Tuesday. A lot of head scratchers, especially when Jaron Hall hasn't come back to the team after being waived in favor of Brett Rippon. But hopefully I didn't steal your thunder there. What, generally speaking, from the last week, roster trimmed down to 53 players, was the most surprising move or lack thereof for these Vikings?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, the Jaron Hall one was a little surprising. I thought he played well enough, especially that last game, to kind of keep his spot, be the number 3 guy. So it's kind of weird. But like my first, I guess, initial kind of most shocking was the Kene cut. Now it seems maybe he's injured. The whole situation seems a little weird because I really thought they were gonna but want to keep him around for kickoffs and everything. But I guess Miles Gaskin is that guy instead. So didn't really see that one coming as far as actually a cut for us. But I think kind of most surprising that they haven't done yet still would be addressing defensive tackle, kind of that interior D line, right? Like talked about it in the like one of the other shows we were on is like, guys, come on. Talked about it so much, I like you went after the big name guys, and so you still haven't done anything, right? There's like nothing really that impressive about the interior D line. So I would have thought might have addressed that at some point. Maybe they're just waiting until after week 1, keep the guaranteed salaries kind of off the books there. So I don't want to freak out, if you want to call it that, too much until maybe after the first few weeks there. there's obviously always going to be changes and roster turnover, stuff like that. But yeah, I'm gonna keep on that same thread of like interior defensive line. What are you guys doing? Just I feel like getting Gilmore doesn't make him a great cornerback group, right? I mean
makes them
but
not bad.
exactly, they're not terrible, right? If they still had Mackay, I feel even better, if they would have went out and added Gilmore. But I think if Mackay stays healthy, we probably don't. So take that for, I guess, what it is. But yeah, cornerbacks are not bad, like not terrible. So I just really feel like that interior D line, I guess, quality is probably the weakest point for us, at least right now. Yeah, I guess that's kind of where I stand on that. Thought I'd be a little more active, just kind of overall as far as possible additions. But I mean, got most of the guys. I'm pretty sure everybody that was in camp back on the practice squad. So good to see. Other than, like I said, Jaron Hall, we'll see kind of what happens with him here. But yeah, nothing I can really get too upset about, I don't think. So
on Jaron Hall, the only thing that surprises me, because on this show, if you guys and gals watch this religiously on Saturday nights or Sundays, Brev and I are not high like the rest of the world on Jaron Hall. The producer of this show, Tyler Ireland, is, but Brev and I have talked about how we very much view him as ceiling as a backup quarterback, and I think the preseason convinced some people that, hey, this guy can be the real deal. But it was weird that they don't trust him one iota for the regular season whatsoever. To go get Brett Rippon as the alternative tells us all we need to know about how they felt Hall was progressing. And they said, hey, we want to sink more time into him, which I thought was hilarious. We want to develop the guy, so we're going to cut him. And that's what they did. They haven't signed him back to the practice squad. Maybe he's exploring his options. So the Hall one, I think, was surprising to the world, but I just don't see it with him yet. And the fact that he's 26 concerns me. Like, we're going to put more time into developing him. Great. But, he should be already good to go by that age. Brevin, so we got Kane covered, and then Jaron Hall. Do you got any other ones that stood off the page?
Shout out to those that may or may not have predicted Kane getting cut. Like,
oh yeah, I was when I was coming up with these topics, I was like, oh god, I got to give Brev his flowers, and then I didn't do it. Yeah, you've chirped that I think on 3 different shows, on this one specifically, and each time it was like, he's still pounding that drum, huh? And then it happened.
Yeah, and funnily enough, I did walk back on it a little bit, like in the middle of the preseason, because all signs pointed to like he was going to be the running back 3. So I walked back a bit on it because it just seemed obvious that they wanted to keep him. But I guess I should have just stuck to my this is definitely happening, and I'd look a lot more cool right now. But yeah, that either way, that was still surprising because that was kind of like my hot take prediction when we had nothing else to talk about in May and June. I guess the thing that stuck out to me the most, maybe in terms of like the whole ordeal, is like how quickly that Fabian Moreau became a lock to make the roster. And I feel like we never even talked about him. Like we mentioned him, but like we were always talking about, oh, is like Caleb Evans going to make the roster? Is Dwight McGlothern going to make it? Duke Shelley, is he going to make it? Fabian Moreau making it is just like he got signed, and it seemed like pretty quickly he was a lock for the roster. And
they treated him just like Gilmore.
Exactly. So that was kind of shocking to me. I live near Washington, D.C., so like I'm a little bit tapped into the Commanders fan aspect perspective of things, and they seem to like Fabian Moreau because I believe they drafted Fabian Moreau. So I could be totally wrong, and I just said a bunch of BS. But
no, they did. 2017.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know they liked him back then, and that was like the most exposure I had to Fabian Moreau. So when we got linked to him, I was like, oh, it's that guy I heard of 7 years ago. Cool. But yeah, just the whole ordeal of him very quickly becoming a lock for the roster was kind of surprising to me.
Yeah, Moreau was signed 3 weeks ago, and just no brainer that I don't know if he's going to start, probably not, but he will be a factor. He had a 62 something PFF last year, and his strength is pass coverage, so we'll take it. And he played a lot for the Broncos last year. The only other surprise to call out to folks is Jalen Redmond making the roster. Not that he's a total badass or anything, but usually those UFL, XFL stories don't amount to anything. It's a cool thing to think about when they get signed because they parlayed that league into a trial with a team. And Jalen Redden made it. I don't know. He might be like the 53rd guy on the roster if they sign somebody else. But it's cool, and kudos to him for making the roster. All right. Aside from the Zimmer interview, aside from roster cuts, Eric, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah took the microphone on Thursday, and predictably, reporters asked him about his 2022 draft class because the first two guys from that class are now strikeouts. Andrew Booth was traded to the Cowboys and made that roster, and Lewis Cine swerved a little bit, was going to play for the Jets, now plays for the Bills, DeMar Hamlin's team. And when he was asked about the mistakes at the top of that draft, he basically said that he tried to do everything, fix everything in one draft. I will always be curious whether or not the Vikings ownership told Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, if we hire you, you are going to be a competitive rebuild guy. Or if he came into the job interview and said, I'm a competitive rebuild guy, and they were like, ooh, we like that. Let's do it. I'm not sure which it is, but he tried to fix the Vikings by trading back. That was his rationale, trying to come back from 33-0 by doing a trade back, which did not work. So he basically said that he's not going to do that anymore. He wanted to build this thing organically, foundationally. That's why you've seen the moves you had this offseason with Dallas Turner coming in and JJ McCarthy. So I wanted to get your take, Eric, on those comments. Do you respect that type of accountability where he basically says that he screwed up with those picks and he's since has a plan to fix it?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think it's important for him to, I guess as a fan, like, right, you want to hear that from either your coach or front office, like, hey, yeah, I'm new at this, right? Thought one idea was the best way to go. Definitely didn't work out, right? I think we just got so used to like anything that Spielman would say in his interviews, it was either a lie or it was, the best talk around the subject to say a bunch of stuff without saying anything. So I mean, it is nice to have, kind of that transparency from him, which I don't think he can help. I think that's just kind of his natural way of speaking. And, I think it was his first year. He kind of got, in some hot water for saying never go full Rams or whatever it was. So he's been a little more careful since then. But I mean, it's nice to have the honesty, whether or not maybe it was like the best excuse for why he did it the way he did. Who knows, right? I mean, it does make sense though, right? You've got a team that missed the playoffs 2 years, 3 years in a row, whatever it was. And I think most of us know, like, yeah, the Wolves, they always want to be competitive. They want to make the playoffs, whether they're a powerhouse or not, or if they can just luck their way into it, they want to be there. So I really don't think there was another option for him other than the competitive rebuild or, whatever, like just try to make it there. And, whether that matched up with his kind of philosophies or not, I think it probably was more of an ownership thing. At least that's what I'm going to keep convincing myself of, I guess. It's good to have the honesty, right? I mean, learn from your mistakes, hopefully. Not to say that, hopefully he like never trades back again and tries to kind of recoup some picks. I think we'll probably see that this coming year just because of the lack of them. But let's not go, 20 something picks and then take a non-premium position. Let's not do that again. Because, it obviously can be valuable either way, trading back or trading up, getting more of the premier players. But good to see that he's, kind of learning and admitting like, it didn't work out. Going to be better, trying different things and hopefully getting them to the best spot.
I think there was even though it was beforehand, it was a sharp contrast to the Zimmer interview, because if this would have been like the Zimmer interview, you would have blamed everybody but yourself for those draft picks. So I respected the answer as well. And it kind of made sense that he was kind of learning what a competitive rebuild was and was like, all right, well, and ultimately the team went 13-4, even with that draft class in his first season. So he was onto something kind of. Brev, I kind of chuckled that the only thing that was really wrong with the strategy trying to erase 33-0 is that Booth and Scene sucked. So that was where you got it wrong. And that maybe that's because everything was so rushed, like he kind of hinted, or the scouts weren't good. But I too like the transparency about, I don't know if that means he'll forever stick and pick. This will probably be a big ass conversation we have in about 6 months, because if the Vikings finish 7-10 or worse, they'll probably have a top 10 pick. We'll probably be debating stick and pick Travis Hunter or trade back, something like that. Hopefully the Vikings are really good. We don't even have to talk about that. But Brev, Kwesi's shining light on the 2022 first 2 rounds that are now failed.
So I greatly appreciate the honesty for sure. I believe he stated, I don't even want to say he stated the obvious, because like he's saying he was trying to fix everything in one foul swoop and kind of overcomplicating it. I understand they were about to face some financial ruin a bit from the Kendricks contract, the Thielen contract, and whatnot. What was there to fix? Like, other than the contract, from a draft standpoint, and this is proof, they won 13 games with Rick's roster.
Mm-hmm.
What was he trying to fix? I think that was and again, this is the age-old conversation, that was the perfect time for them to just stick and pick the best player available.
Mm-hmm.
What are you trying to fix by trading back and taking a safety? That's where I'm like, I appreciate what he's trying to say, but I don't think he's wrong about anything, but just like it doesn't all really add up to me, because like if you're trying to fix everything, you're not going to win 13 games with the roster that you inherited and draft a safety with your first round pick, if after trading in division, by the way, with Detroit. So, and I can sit here all day and be like, oh, we should have drafted Kyle Hampton, we should have drafted Jordan Davis, should have drafted Jamison Williams. Not living up to expectations yet, I think, is not a good excuse for Kwesi, because Jamison Williams is a good player. He just hasn't put it together yet, but that's a common reasoning I see defending Kwesi around Twitter. But I don't know. Like, I don't think he's wrong for saying what he said. I understand what he's trying to say, but at the same time, I'm like, the things to fix were coming the year after. You didn't have to fix anything that year. Like, we were gonna be competitive. So I don't know. Maybe that's just me being pessimistic, but I don't know.
The only thing that I can think of is to substantiate fixing everything all at once. In his mind, as general manager, as he looked down and saw, oh my gosh, Harrison Smith is 33 at the time.
Yeah.
All right, we better get our replacement safety. Oh my God, Patrick Peterson's 33 at the time. Better get our replacement corner. And maybe that's what he was trying to do. That's the only thing I can really glean from that. But it'll be
definitely
interesting.
I definitely understand like the corner, like going for Booth. Like Booth is, I can forgive the Booth pick for sure, because that was the right pick at the time. But like the Lewis Cine, trading down for Lewis Cine, like if you're drafting to replace Harrison Smith, here's Kyle Hamilton, probably the best defensive player in the. That's where I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, he was the only football player in the draft that was absolutely guaranteed to be good. There was no debates. Almost like Joe Alt this time, or Marvin Harrison. We're like, it's not a matter of whether they're going to be good. It's whether they're going to be Hall of Famers. I will always give Kwesi praise for not drafting a quarterback that first draft, though, because it probably would have been Kenny Pickett, and we would probably already moved on from him. All right, the very last topic, Eric, you got a complete blank canvas. I am going to say Giants-Vikings is 1 week away. Speak on it. Tell me what you're feeling about that game.
Yeah, I hate to start off pessimistic, but the Giants line scares the crap out of me, honestly. Probably shouldn't be as worried about it, right? Like Darisaw O'Neal, I think they can handle the edge rushers. Not that Brian Burns and Thibodeau aren't really good players, right? But I think we'll be okay there. But yeah, I mean the interior, I'm until they prove me otherwise, especially Bradbury and Ed Ingram, I am never going to give them the benefit of the doubt. They've just never done anything to make me feel like I can do that. And then you're going to have Blake Brandel in there now instead of Reisner. So that worries me for sure. I think Darnold can probably escape a little bit better than Cousins, right? I mean,
only because
obviously
of sheer youth, I think.
Right, right, exactly. Whether or not he really does have a great pocket presence, we'll find out pretty quickly, I think. But if something derails that game for us, I mean, I really think that's going to be why. Otherwise, I mean, shoot, I think our defense is going to eat Daniel Jones alive, to be honest. There won't be the Ed Donatel, Daniel Jones game anymore. I think that's long gone. So their offense doesn't really scare me. I'm sure Neighbors will probably get, decent numbers, right? I mean, he's going to be, I think, a really good receiver for a long time as well. But yeah, I mean, just blitz just blitz him. I mean, make him, make him prove that he can beat you. It's like the numbers are out there. He doesn't do well, and he looked terrible in the preseason. He's coming off an injury. Just go after him until it just doesn't make sense to anymore. I mean, let him try to beat you. But that's kind of just initial thoughts on that. I do think Minnesota wins overall. It'll probably be closer than I would would think or like it to be. Just I think given the kind of overall talent, I feel like Minnesota's roster is quite a bit better than New York's. But again, it takes one strip sack, whatever, something bad to really turn the momentum, and who knows, what could happen after that. But I do think they win, Minnesota. Hopefully it's kind of a good gelling game for everybody. Obviously there's going to be a lot of new faces and everything, but hopefully just getting a win week one kind of puts them in the right direction, because then they've got I think San Francisco next. It's definitely not gonna get any easier for them. So getting that first win, I think, will be big for them. But I think they can do it. Just sheer talent wise, coaching wise, I think like I said, I think Minnesota's definitely got way more boxes checked than New York. But I thought that in the playoff game as well, and that drive home was not fun. That was very disappointing.
This is the second year in a row the Vikings have had the easy game on the schedule to start the season, and so hopefully it'll be actually legitimately easy this year, because last year it was not. All right, Brev, it's to you. Giants-Vikings for the closing arguments of tonight's show.
I would predict that Minnesota's going to win. Can you actually say one more time how far that game is away?
Oh, that game, by the time folks watch it, 1 week.
Oh, God, I love that so much. Sorry. I think Minnesota's going to win because they have to. The opening to the schedule, or the first half of the schedule, really is insanely brutal. And I think they know that there's already, as much as this year's a transition year, I think there needs to be a sense of urgency now to win this game, because luckily you've got San Fran and Houston at home, but then you're going to Lambeau, then you're going to London to play the Jets, then out of the bye week. Sorry, I'm getting a phone call. I don't know. All right.
The Lions.
Yeah, Lions.
Rams.
Yeah, so it's tough. So I think really the only thing, I don't want to say the only thing, but the main thing that would throw them off is going to be if Dexter Lawrence creating chaos on the interior line, like Eric hinted at, with the interior offensive line. So especially in Sam Darnold's first game as a Viking, when he's got good moments in camp, but he's also had shaky moments. So if Dexter Lawrence can really interrupt Sam Darnold, which he's more than capable of doing, and Sam Darnold is more than capable of seeing ghosts, very high possibility that'll happen. And I think Kevin O'Connell knows that, and I think he is smart enough to kind of be able to scheme around that. So it'd be nice to see a run game get going. That would be awesome. That would be a Brev key to the game. Just run the ball, pound the rock, old school football.
Yeah, and they're going to have to improve that area, because if they don't, I have legitimate fears that Kevin O'Connell would start sniffing a hot seat if they just every year finish in the bottom rung in rushing efficiency, because that doesn't translate ever to winning football if you can at least run the ball at a reasonable clip. All right. Eric, thank you for joining us. We'll probably hit your line in October, hopefully talking about a team that's maybe 500. It kind of feels strange to say that is the goal through 6 games, but that's probably realistic. Anything else, Eric, before we sign off for the weekend?
I don't think so. I guess to Brev's point, like running game, I don't know why, but I feel like the one person I just always forget that is on the team now is Aaron Jones. Like,
because we haven't
crazy.
seen him at all at the preseason.
Right.
Yep. And it's just
like
there is fanfare, but he doesn't
Yeah.
have like this big high profile of I have arrived. I think it's mostly because he was on the bench the entire preseason.
Right. So it's like, man, just fingers crossed, pray, healthy Aaron Jones. But yeah, I mean, that kind of just another exciting kind of point to this season is like, yeah, I just keep forgetting he's even on this team. So I am definitely excited to see what he can do. And like I said, hopefully improve this running game, because yeah, this 35-65 mix of run to pass is like, it's just not gonna work long term. And I would hate for O'Connell to be on the hot seat, like you said, or be gone for that reason. Because yeah, I mean, everybody's got their flaws, right? But I have a hard time finding too big of one right now with him. So I really hope he sticks around for a long time. So hopefully Aaron Jones can kind of keep him, definitely improve that and keep him here for a while. So
yep, Aaron Jones was wonderful in the last 5 games of the season. I'm talking like elite wonderful. All right, guys, you have a wonderful night, and Brevin will probably talk to you. I'm gonna guess next Sunday after the game we'll do something. Okay.
Cool.
All right, you guys take care.
Thanks, guys.
Later.